started with our next session. We've got Janice Griffin here, Oracle Ace. She spoke to us yesterday for our performance tuning day, and she's going to tell us a little bit about Quest Software, one of our sponsors for the week. So Janice, I think I gave you screen sharing abilities. Feel free to get started, and then I'm going to give you guys a few reminders while she sets up there. Yes, everything's live. As you could tell today, they are being recorded. So days 1, 2, and 3 are up on www.orapub.com. You should have an email from Katie Barnes with links to those. Today's sessions will hopefully have in your inbox by Monday, and they should all also be on NYOUG.org over the weekend. So if you're a member already there, you should be able to have access there. And if you're not, you can sign up for free. All right, all yours. Thanks, Janice.
Oh, great. Thanks, Monica. And I want to thank everybody for joining us here again today. This is exciting that we get to do some training. I wish it was in person, and maybe someday it will be, but I'm going to hopefully talk just 5 minutes. And, my name is Janice Griffin. I'm a, senior sales consultant here at Quest. And if you're not familiar with Quest tools, hopefully I can give you 5 minutes of making you familiar. Quest has a lot of tools for databases. In fact, I came to Quest about 4 years ago just because, Quest is really, involved with just, database specific technologies, which, a lot of times when you see companies and they just want to expand and give you everything, but, a lot of times that's all watered down. So I like our tools for that. But, Quest has tools and solutions and partners to help, simplify your data and your ERP operations, and, in order to free up more time for your innovations, if you will. And I've got these 4 quadrants here that, typically kind of sums up all of the activities that you have to deal about and think about when you're dealing with databases. You got data diversity, cloud. People are moved to the cloud. DevOps is becoming more and more important, as that data is really the #1 asset in your company nowadays. And then of course security, regulatory compliance. So we're going to walk through, and I'll show you where Quest tools actually fit into some of these sections. So starting out with data diversity. You probably have, if you don't already have more than one database type, you probably will find yourself down the road getting one soon. It might be, just another different relational database. Maybe you have Oracle now, but you also have SQL Server. A lot of times, in my experience, marketing will sneak in a SQL Server application, and they'll hire an outside consultant, and all of a sudden it's revenue generating. We have to maintain it in IT. There's NoSQL and open source databases. And then also, we're being pushed to the cloud. So there's a flavor of different cloud databases too. So this just really helps increase the complexity and makes it harder for businesses to maintain not only operational control, but also to gain real business value out of their data. If their data is spread all over, it's hard to, actually combine it and see real value. Quest has FogLight Evolve, which if you are being moved to the cloud, I would recommend you look at that tool. A lot of our tools have, 14 to 30 day trials that you can download. But FogLight Evolve will basically help you manage your costs, your cloud costs, and even including cloud containers. So it's a great tool to see across, especially if you've got multi-cloud environments. You can see sprawl, you can see waste, you can see all of that, and you can recoup savings using FogLight Evolve. FogLight for Database is a cross-platform monitoring tool that covers many different database types, including NoSQL, open source, and of course relational. And we have what we call Performance Investigator that gives you that deep multi-dimensional dive into your queries and shows you the workload and all that good stuff. Toad, you've probably heard from Toad through the years. It's been used for decades by not only DBAs, but data engineers, analysts, development teams. Basically, Toad Data Point is a cross-platform data integration tool that simplifies data access, preparation, and provisioning. What's neat about it is it has a workbook interface for business users. So, they can even use it to get simple to use visual, query building and workflow automation. So they can either, it's a great collaboration tool. And then data provisioning via Toad Intelligent Central enables, secure sharing of up-to-date data sets across the entire business. So those tools for data diversity can help you. For cloud, with Toad, you can use it on-prem and in cloud databases to simplify and automate database administration tasks. And this is not a trivial thing. If you can save any time from these trivial administration tasks, by automating them, you're freeing up time to do better things, to innovate, if you will. Toad Developer and Toad DBA, both of those tools have Benchmark Factory. And Benchmark Factory is a great way to record your workload and then play it back in different scenarios. So you can actually, record your on-prem databases and their workload, and then you can actually play them back, in the cloud database and get a better idea of each characteristics if you're planning on moving to the cloud. And then finally, after migration, you can use Foglight to compare the differences, and you can actually see the costly queries if some have bumped up when you move to the cloud. You can tune them with SQL Optimizer, to help you reduce cloud spend. And then finally, with SharePlex, it's a high-performance replication solution for Oracle. You can migrate your Oracle databases to OCI, AWS, Azure with no data loss and minimal downtime. It's a cheaper solution than some of Oracle's solutions. You can also move Oracle data to SQL Server for, maybe you've got low cost, you want to offload reporting to something lower cost, or maybe to Kafka for data streaming services. The next quadrant is business agility. DevOps is a growing business, and if you can get behind it. In fact, I just did a presentation not too long ago on biz DevOps that includes the business, and you really do. You need to have everybody collaborating with that. But Quest, Foglight, Toad for Oracle, and Stat, and Apex SQL for SQL Server can help you accelerate your release cycles at the database level with minimum risk. Toad DevOps Toolkit for Oracle or Apex SQL DevOps Toolkit for SQL Server. You can use them during your build and orchestration, or release orchestration. Stat can help support database file and configuration, object versioning, and also release automation. And then Foglight with Performance Investigator, it has a change tracking feature, to monitor workload performance changes, and it can actually help DBAs identify a potential issue before the release. So, because you can see when a change happens, you can compare that with the workload and see if it's gotten worse or actually improved it. And then finally, regulatory compliance. Toad for Oracle now has a sensitive data protection module that works, that really helps you. DBAs can leverage that with Oracle's redaction, encryption, and audit tools to help protect personal and sensitive data. Apex SQL Mask and Apex SQL Audit are for SQL Server. So, they do pretty much the same thing that, Toad for Oracle with the sensitive data protection module does for Oracle, if you will. And then Stats for Oracle eBiz, Stats for, PeopleSoft, and Stat for generic applications. They provide an end-to-end management and auditing capabilities. So it's the only solution in the marketplace that can, represent and prevent controls to empower organizations to achieve change management compliance. So, these things you should consider, especially if you're being pushed to go faster, better. We call it, managing, monitoring, and moving all the time. IT is. So to get better at all of that, please consider our products. And with that, I hope you have a wonderful day. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Janice, and thank you to Quest for helping us out this week. So to get things going, Jeff, I don't think you need much of an introduction. If you guys don't know Jeff Smith, I highly recommend following him or going to thatjeffsmith.com. So I'm just going to let you start since we're 15 after. If you guys have questions, please drop them in the Q&A box. Thanks.
Thanks for the intro.
Best intro you've ever gotten, I'm sure.
Quick shout out to Janice. She's one of the nicest people in the biz. I think I met her at least 15 years ago. If you have a chance to meet up and talk to the Quest crew at a user group in person, which God, we all hope that's soon, go say hello, because they're nice people, and they gave me a break a long time ago too. So
thanks, Jeff. It's good hearing your voice.
You didn't know what I was going to say next. No. So I'm a product manager at Oracle, and I'm going to take you through our integrated development environment, which is SQL Developer, and that's included with your database license. And it doesn't have some of the data specific widgets that Janice may have been talking about with to data point. But if you're doing PL SQL heavy work or running queries or helping people with their code, I'm going to try to show you some stuff where you can get immediate value for that. And if you have questions on how to use any of this stuff, I've spent a significant amount of my life. It's kind of sad if I think about it very long, writing about that on my blog or making videos, but I also invite you to contact me directly, jeff.d.smith@oracle.com, or you can leave me a note on my blog or say hello on Twitter. I'm always happy to talk to customers. All right, I'm going to try to do my talk in the 44 minutes we have till the top of the hour. And thanks Viscosity and Quest for sponsoring this week, and thanks for letting me come on at the end. Okay. So I'm not a developer. I just help developers use our development tools. I'm talking about specifically SQL Developer today, but we have command line interfaces. We have design tools. We have web gateways for the database. And we have SQL Developer Web, where we've taken what people like on the desktop tools and try to put it in the browser as much as possible. So you heard Janice mention cloud. Yes, Oracle has a cloud, and we have a database service. We even have a free version of that database service, the always free autonomous database. If you go to cloudoracle.com/free, you can figure out how you can go and create not one, but 2 free instances of an Oracle database, either 19C or 21C. So if Chris Saxon was showing you folks some techniques and some tips and tricks that are only available in 19 or 21, and you don't have one of those databases that your org to play with, you can go create your own and be your own DBA. The default interface to those databases is SQL Developer Web. You don't have to install anything. But that's also available on premises as well. So if you take our web technology and you deploy that in your mid-tiers, you can give a website URL to your database end users, and they can, in their browser, sign in with their Oracle database user credentials and run queries and export their data to Excel and build their spreadsheets, which is at the end of the day what most people are doing. Anyway, I'm over all of those tools. So if you have feedback on those things, I welcome that. So I'm going to be showing stuff. I don't think we have a ton of people. There's like, what, 50 of us? So if anyone has a question, if you want to put it in the chat, or if you want to be super brave and unmute yourself, I'm happy to take questions as we go, but I'm going to go at a quick pace. So SQL Developer, it's a couple of things. It's not just your IDE for PL SQL, which is what I'm here to talk about today, but it's also a query tool. It's also a database administration tool. It's sort of your Swiss Army knife for the database. As a Java application, you can run it on your Mac, you can run it on a Linux desktop, and of course you can run it on Windows, which is about where 95% of the users are today. All you need is Oracle Java 8 or 11, which is also free, and this will just spark right up on your machine. And we do updates about twice a year. So I love bad movies, and I love bad movies that are so bad they almost wrap around the spectrum to being good again. And this is one of those movies. It's got multiple Academy Award winners and nominees in it. And if you just want to waste 2 hours of your time, go watch The Core. But I'm here to talk to you about the core features of your integrated development environment for SQL, and I guess SQL a little bit as well. So if you're going to spend much time in your tools, I say set it up to look and feel the way that you want. So what I've done in mine, so under code editor display, I've set the margin to black so I don't see it, but otherwise if I set it to white, I get this thing reminding me it's time to hit the carriage return, because if we print this on paper, it won't look right. You know, that's kind of a bygone era. I don't think we need the reminder to keep our lines from going over a certain amount, but you have a lot of control in here. If you're debugging code and you can't tell if you're looking at a tab or a space character, we have this white space option, and you can see exactly what's in your text editor. If you come in here and look at the syntax collars, you can set these collar schemes. If you don't like that the highlighted line of code is with a blue background, you can simply scroll through this list until you see the parser element that represents what you're seeing, and then you can change it. You can change, like we showed the syntax warnings with the little squiggly lines, you can change those. You have a lot of control over how your code is going to look. If you want to see line numbers or not, you know, these are checkboxes. And then maybe most importantly is pick a font that is developer friendly, or is at least friendly for you. So in the last release or two, we've changed the default font to this hack font, which is really nice because we make it easy, or it makes it easy to see the difference between a 0 and the number 0 and the letter O, and various other things that it's nice about. A frequently asked question I get is, hey, does SQL Developer support Unicode? And yes, it does, but then you'll have problems with, say, Hebrew or kanji or Cyrillic characters not showing correctly. And 99 times out of 100, the problem is you're using a font that doesn't support that character set. So if you want to know if you're using a font that supports your character set, you can paste the code here that you're not sure if it works. And if you see it here, then it'll show up in your grids in your editor the way that you want. So a fun one I like to do, I use emojis way too much, but if you want to know if this is going to show up correctly, oh no, it doesn't, you know, so then you just come down here and pick a font that supports your emojis. And then when you compile your SQL source, you can drive your DBAs nuts with the emojis in your Oracle database, monospaced. Yeah, that's not going to go well, but you know, that's what is going to control that. Oh my gosh, this looks ugly. You have to fix that. So I like hack. I spent way too much time in the preferences talking about the preferences, but most of you probably have not spent 5 minutes in any of the applications that you use in the preferences. It's always a good idea. You know, we have a problem in the world, you know, with attention spans. If you need a break from your current task, go spend 5 minutes in the application that you're currently in at the preferences and just tool around at the different switches that you can flip on and off. It can really have a big impact in your day. All right, so into actual features that might help you with writing code or updating code or just messing around in your editors. So we have auto replace templates. So I can type a few characters and hit Control Spacebar, and we automatically replace the editor contents with what you have built into your preferences. And then we have snippets that are in these forms that you can drag and drop into your code editor. So question from Stephen, I'm running 20.4. I used to be able to see a DBA tab that showed storage, but now I can't find it. Did we remove it? So Stephen, you are asking about view DBA, and it's not showing for you. Most likely what's happened is that your desktop layout has been corrupted. And so probably all you need to do is come to the window menu and say reset Windows to factory settings. And then open DBA again, and it should pop right up. And if that doesn't fix it, find me online and we'll work it out together. That's how Q&A works, folks. Ask a question, get an answer, hopefully. So these code templates, think of things that you're writing just over and over and over and over and over again, things that you would code into macros, into Excel, for example, or aliases you might have built into your Linux terminal. Code those into your IDE. So there's a place in here for SQL code templates. Yeah, right here, where you can code these. So I've got one called Jeff that just does something real stupid. So if I type Jeff, Control Space, it replaces that with that. So, I mean, it just saves me from ever having to type that again. The keyboard activation, that's Control Spacebar. So that's the keyboard shortcut activator for code snippets and the IntelliSense, where we try to guess or autocomplete stuff for you. That's also a preference. You can change that if you want. I already talked about this. The formatter. So Toad has a formatter. VS Code has a formatter. Of course, SQL Developer has a formatter. And there's one thing in common that people have with all the code formatters out there. Everyone hates the default formatting options, and everyone has an opinion on what pretty code is, and none of us can ever agree on what those are. So spend a few moments and set up the formatter the way that it's going to make you happy. Just know that when you submit your code to master, someone else is going to pull it down into a branch and immediately format it the way they want it to look. That's okay. When you get it back, you can format it back the way you want it to look. I have found online a really nice kind of global set of formatting rules that really just speak to me. I mean, they look nice. So there's an organization called Travatis. They're based out of Europe. I think they were acquired by Accenture, but don't quote me on that. They've shared some best practices around not just formatting your code, but also writing it. They share these in a GitHub repo, and I think they've got a plugin for Toad as well, but they definitely have the rules set up for SQL Developer, and you can pull those down. So if you just Google Travatis coding guidelines in SQL Developer, you should be able to find this link, and then you can just suck those in to SQL Dev. Oh, Stephen, you fixed it. Great. That makes me happy. All right. Generating code blocks. So if you want to execute a stored procedure, you can simply, in your anonymous block, start typing the name of the stored procedure and hit Control Spacebar, and we'll give you the templated list of arguments with dummy names, and then in comments, the data types that are expected. So again, just trying to save you time. You can also drag and drop the procedure from the tree into the editor, and we'll write it for you. So Got too many windows open. Where did my SQL dev go? There we go. Didn't recognize it. So look at this procedure. Just drag it over. It built out for me this entire declare block. Or if I type again, test, that's the package. Let's not do package. Let's do add emp. There's the block. And then I just come up here and fill in the details. Again, anytime a tool can save you 5 seconds, that's a huge win. So regardless of what tool you're using, the biggest tip and trick is find out where those productivity shortcuts are. And anytime you save yourself time, that's more time you can spend on you. You know, learning new techniques, learning new features, screw learning, more time you can spend at home with your family, your dog, or at the pub. You know, get the projects done sooner. It makes everybody happier. This is just sort of a desktoping feature in SQL Developer. You can have as many editors open at once as you want. You can have them side by side, top, bottom. You can even flow editors over to your massive third, fourth, or fifth screen. I used to run a contest to see, you know, should I show of hands who had the most external monitors? And I got up to like 8 at one point, and I just got bored of that question. If you're working from home, which I'm sure most of you are, make sure you have a good work environment, standing desk, something ergo-friendly, huge monitor. I try to have my Twitter feed, my Outlook, my Slack, and my code open all at once. And then I usually just look at one of those at a time. So I use this huge monitor as a single display at the end of the day. But you can set up your desktop in SQL Developer to fit the task at hand. So for example, I might want to look at this worksheet at the same time I'm looking at my IDE where I'm doing my debugging. So if I right click on the tab and I say new tab group, I then have these independent sections of the screen, and I can start doing things more than one at a time. This procedure isn't very long. Imagine this was 500 lines instead of 30. You can split screen your code editors. So up here, I could be looking at the cursor definition, and down here, I could be looking at the implementate or the execution of the cursor. So you can also right click on the tab and do the split there. Or I can also say unsplit, but at the top corner, in the bottom corner is where you're going to have these little widgets that you can find and drag, and you can see where the split screen is going to pop out. You can create as many of these groups of tabs as you want, and you can also drag and drop tabs around. And if you get to the point where you've screwed something up horribly and you need to reset, it's the same thing I told the person asked the question. You just come to help, I'm sorry, window, reset Windows to factory settings, and you're going to be back to where he started. Sorry, Stephen, I forgot your name. Do what I told Stephen to do. Reset your factory, your desktop Windows settings. Control click navigation. Our databases are huge. They are a pain in the butt to navigate, even with schema browsers, even with connection trees. If you've got code in an editor, the easiest way to get to one of these objects is hopefully your tool offers some sort of navigation trick like this, like with the control key or maybe the command key on a Mac. If you mouse over this and just click, it automatically opens that object for me. If your tool doesn't have that kind of stuff, it probably does, and you just haven't found it yet. So that's one way to find something. The other way you can find stuff, we have an object search. Oops, what did I do? Oh, the beauty of live demos. So in this case, I can pick a connection. and I'm looking for something called imp. It's going to go find everything in the database for me that starts with imp. And so this is now a navigator. If I want to go open hr.imps copy eco2, I just click on that and it opens it for me. This object search is going to come in real handy when we start talking about SQL, because we can search more than just names. We can also go into PL scope and also the code itself. So the SQL source code, our view and materialized view code, the all statements view, which I think is, if Chris is still on, he could tell us if that was 12C or 19C, that's new. No, it's new since 12.2. I love the help. And then we also have REST APIs. They can also have stored procedures and source code mixed into this. So you can actually search that. Quick outline. So if I right click in a SQL code editor, there's this thing called a code outline. And then it gives me jump points. So let's switch over to a package. So this is what's inside my package. I have a function and then a procedure declared inside the function. If I wanted to look at those individual things in this program, I can switch to the advanced view and turn on more stuff. Like, this is how the parser sees my SQL program now. You might like that, you might not, I don't know. I think that's more of a nerdy feature. I pretty much just use the basic one. So if you got packages with a couple dozen global variables and like 30 or 40 procedures, it's a nice navigator. The other nice thing is, as you're scrolling through this code, we'll update the navigator to show you where at in the code you're in, which is kind of cool. This one's not on by default. You'll have to turn this one on if you want to see that. I'm not going to talk about Excel too much, but we're often like loading test data and sucking test data out to go use somewhere else. Almost all database tools support this because Excel is the #1 business application out there. But if you have Excel data and you want to get it into your database, God bless you, because that's where we want data to be, is inside the database, because that's when it can be normalized, protected, optimized, and used by others. Right click on a table, say import, we'll suck the data into a new table or to an existing one. It's up to you. And of course, we support more than just Excel. You could do CSV files or delimited text files. And if you have CSV files that are in the billions of rows, you can load those up as external tables or even turn them into SQL loader scenarios. And of course, we can get the data out to Excel as well. When you're sucking data in from Excel, you shouldn't have to be guessing what your tables are. Hopefully you've gone through a data modeling exercise. If you're tuning applications, hopefully you have a data model you can consult that tells us or gives us advice on what should be indexed, where things are found, how things are normalized, what relationships are. Hopefully those relationships are codified with actual foreign key constraints. Most of the nightmares Chris Saxon and I run into are environments where they're like, oh, hey, we'll just control the data from the application and not put it in the database. And then they wonder why the database runs like garbage. It's because your data model sucks or you don't have one. Michael's got a question. Is there an easy way to alias tables as I build a query? My query can contain 10 or more tables with common columns, and so aliasing is a must. Yeah, there's a couple ways you can do that. So there's an option to automatically alias stuff when you use the insight feature. Select star from employees. Oh, that didn't do it. A, but if I add the alias and then I say a dot, it'll bring up the list of helps if you have valid SQL. You know, it'll alias as columns. But what I was going to show was this. If you toggle over to Query Builder, you can give this an alias. And then if I were to drag those other 9 tables that you're going to use, regions, and locations, countries. You can set the aliases up here, and then you can create the joins. And here we go. There we go. Then set my regions. Anyway, as you start doing this stuff, you'll see the generated code updated to reflect those aliases. And you'll see that it used anti-join syntax. If you're an old school Oracle person and that bothers you, you can simply select this code and say, give me the Oracle joins, and we'll rewrite it that way. Or if you get this code and this drives you nuts, it goes the other way too. The dirty little secret is a lot of the Oracle join syntax. That's how the optimizer executes it. So when you write code that looks like this, the optimizer plans, they write it in the Oracle join syntax. There's some, I think there's some outer join scenarios where it actually uses it this way. But end of the day, write code that's easy for others to understand and to read. And most people agree that this is the preferred join syntax today, but the tool, we don't judge, we support both. I hope that answered your question, Michael, or at least got you closer. Okay, actual Cody stuff. So that compiler has a lot of features built into it that a lot of people don't realize. So there's PL scope, and there are PL SQL warnings, and there are compiler settings that tell the database how it should be compiling your PL SQL code. So if I turn these on, I'll get warnings that fall into these categories. Optimization level, you need to go read the docs for that, but it's probably should be set to 2 or 3. And then PL SQL scope, if you turn this on, the database collects additional information on your stored procedures, which I'll show in a second. When you're compiling PL SQL, it's assumed that you're in a development environment and not in production. A lot of these compilation helpers add overhead to the data, to the code, and they will slow them down in production. So when you move code from dev to test to production, at some point you should be changing compiler settings to strip out the debug info, to strip out the PL SQL scope information. But as I start compiling the code with the warnings on, I'll see the warnings here, the lines associated with these little wavy yellow things. That's where I said you could go into the preferences and change the color styles if you want. But if you mouse over the line, it'll say, hey, the assignment to stars may be unnecessary. Oh, here, I probably don't need to do this. Probably because I'm not using it anywhere in the program. And I've got a list of the other warnings here. So compiler warnings in general will not stop the program from being compiled. It does compile the program, it just compiles with warnings. There is a compiler setting that you can force warnings up to the failure level and it will break the program. Just depends on how mean or strict you want to be. But if you're not seeing the warnings, you need to change your compiler settings. This is one of my favorite movies of all time, Aliens. Hicks, it's not Hicks, oh, shoot, what's this guy's name? Bill Paxton's character asks at some point, hey, is this going to be a stand-up fight or just another bug hunt? So we're looking for bugs. I can talk about debuggers all day long. 95% of you are just going to use dbms output. I really don't care which one you use. I just want you to know what your options are, and then you can choose the one that works best for you. dbms output is popular because it's easy. You simply turn it on, you run stuff, and then you see stuff. If you aren't seeing stuff after you run stuff, it's because you haven't set server output on. If you get tired of having to put server output on all the time, every time, build that into your login script and tell SQL developer to run your login script at connect time, and then we'll turn it on for you. So if you like line size always to be 500, if you like to turn longs on for cloud display, if you like to turn server output on, where is that? File name for connection startup script. Put your login SQL here. That will get executed every single time you make a connection, and your session will just be set up and good to go. So a lot of people think they actually have to use the dbms output panel. You don't. You can just say set server output on and run this, and it prints it down here. If you don't want to see that, you can simply turn this off and then also open up dbms output, turn polling on for your connection, and run this. And it doesn't say hello anymore here, but it says it down here. Pick your poison. I, to be honest, just always use server output so I can see it immediately in my script output, and I have one less panel open. So the things to look out for on dbms output, you generally don't want this in code that goes to production, because again, it's not doing anything there. It makes things easier, or sorry, harder to read. It clutters things up, and there's no use for it. Also, you can't see things until after they execute. So if you're in the middle of executing something and you can't see it and you're wondering why, that's why. There is an option in SQL Developer. Where's that? The color you set here is applied to dbms output code lines. So like logging, bits of PL SQL code will highlight differently than the others. So if you don't like that, turn that off. It's not obvious here because I've kind of got like a grayscale set for that category, but that can help you find your instrumentation code. So you can comment it out or remove it before you push it over to production. It probably won't hurt anything in production, but it's just a practice to consider. All right, the actual debugger. So a couple of things for the debugger. I could spend an entire hour, and I have, talking about the debugger. Most of you won't use it, but if you need something to step through and step into and out of multiple anonymous blocks, triggers, functions, calling procedures, calling functions, calling type bodies, you can do this with the debugger. Everything in that stack has to be compiled for debug. You need a breakpoint in your code somewhere and you need the privileges required to run the debugger. And then you should be able to use a tool like Toad, like SQL Developer, like anything else. They're just using the SQL debug APIs in the database to do this stuff. And then you can start stepping through your program and you can see what things are equal to. You can use breakpoints. The only thing you can't do, and people always ask me this, I always ask, hey, can I go backwards in my code? No, you can't go backwards. What you can do is set a breakpoint in a loop and give it a breakpoint count of 50, and it won't stop the code until it gets to the 50th iteration of that line of code. So there are lots of things you can do in the debugger to help you artificially create scenarios where things are getting broken in the code when they run. You know, when your application isn't doing what it's supposed to do in production, you need to be able to reproduce that in development. The debugger's nice because instead of you having to add the code artificially and yourself, you can set up the scenarios using the debugger to try to figure out, you know, what's causing things to break. So some requirements for the debugger. Once you get up to 12C, to use the default debugger, you need an access control list rule that says it's okay for the database to talk to your machine. And then you need dbmess, debug, execute priv, you need debug connect session privilege, and then you've got access to all of this stuff. I'm not going to do a full demo, but you know, to start debugging, you click the bug button, you give us the input variables required, we'll connect. If you have a breakpoint set, we'll stop there, and then you click the buttons to step in and out of things. And here's another cool thing you can do. You can use watches to change the values of variables mid-execution. That's kind of what I meant about using the debugger to set up a specific scenario without changing the source code itself. So if I know that the code breaks when that len gets set to 300, I can artificially set it to 300, hit next, and then see what line of code causes the issue. So dbms debug is much easier to use than the default dbms debug JDWP, because JDWP, the database, reaches back down to the client, and that breaks a lot of our customers' networking rules, and especially if you're in cloud, that's almost never going to work. So you can also use dbms debug, and that just makes an additional database connection from the client. So no ACLs to set up. If you can connect to the database, this debugger should always just work. Mostly the same features. Some of the advanced stuff like the SQL tables, you can't immediately peek into those. But you know, the debugger still works. The breakpoints, the pass counts, this trace in, the trace out stuff, it's all still there. All right, you know your code works, but it's slow. What do we do? So you need to profile it. So right next to the picture of the bug, there's a picture, I don't know what that's supposed to be, but it's our profiler. So what this does is we, via the database, record extra instrumentation and info about your session and what it's doing, what programs are being called, what lines of code are being called. And I guess because we're precision aficionados, we record this in microseconds, so millionths of a second. Like this is 5 seconds, even though it says 5,400,002. And the reason it stayed there for 5 seconds is because this line of code, I said dbms lock sleep for 5 seconds, so I could get interesting information in the profiler. But it'll track everything that happens in the session. So this stored procedure calls this, which runs this, and then comes back out, and you get a profile of all of it. So the profiler is nice. It'll show you sections of your code that are not being called, for example. So like code coverage reports could come out of this. And the database at the end of this session too will also generate an HTML report that you can navigate through. All right, so your code works, it runs fast, and now you need to generate documentation for it. If you use comments in your code and you use this SourceForge kind of Java doc style type of comments, when you use our schema doc generator, we'll generate nicely formatted HTML doc sets for your PL SQL. This is old school HTML with frames. I kind of hate it, but you throw it on a new CSS file in here and you can make it look any which way you want. You know, we just give you the raw HTML and you can pretty it up if you'd like. This is probably a feature not enough people need or not enough people know about. So I probably should talk about this more than I talk about the debugger. PL scope tracks so much about what your program is doing and different elements in your program are doing. So I have a cursor. I compile my program. The database keeps track of where the cursor is declared, where it's called, where it's referenced. I could have a global variable that's being used all over the place and I need to change it somewhere. What's the impact of that? If you have PL scope enabled in your compiler settings, that information is being tracked in the database, and now you can search it using that object search. So in my object search, I'm searching for C1, which is the name of the cursor, and I check on the identifier types and usages, and I search across all schemas or a specific schema on my database connection, and it's going to find that occurrence of the cursor throughout all my programs. And again, the search results turn into navigators. What I see people do is they write like really complicated regular expressions against the all source view, and they try to parse their own PL SQL code, not knowing that the database has already done that for you. You just need to search it. 12.2 added this new view called all statements. Any SQL statement included in your PL SQL code, like SQL for cursors, those are actually being tracked independently of all source in all statements. So just to show you what I'm talking about. Can't type. This is all of the SQL that the database knows about via the PL SQL that you've written, including the last SQL ID, text of the SQL, the full text if it's really long. So this is really useful too. If you're looking for SQL in your database, always include the all statements view. And if you're on 11 GR2, consider this just yet another reason you need to upgrade. If you're building web APIs, web services, REST APIs that your web apps, your mobile apps are calling, and at the end of the day, those applications or those APIs are implemented with PL SQL, we can search that code as well. And you can debug this code inside of the IDEs if you need to. If you didn't know that we gave you everything you need to publish REST APIs for your data, for your business logic, for your stored procedures, well, now you do. It's free, just like SQL Developer. The technology is called Oracle REST Data Services or ORDS. And if you want to learn more about that, just go to oracle.com/rest. Source control. Please God, everyone on this call, tell me you're source controlling your PL SQL. If not, seriously consider start doing that. More stuff. Unit testing. There's a great open source library out there called UT-PL SQL. It was started by Stephen Feuerstein. It's been picked up by the community, really embraced, especially in the last 2 years. They've built some really nice extensions, even for SQL Developer, that makes using the test framework easy. So you can write your code, then test the code all in the same IDE and generate some nice HTML reports that you can share with your coworkers, and you can point at people when they've broken the build. That's always fun. I've got 1 minute left. Our IDEs are nice, but we also have command line interfaces. So SQLcl is a modern SQL plus. We have a command called info, which is like describe, but better. And if I info a stored procedure or package, it does the same thing that that drag and drop I showed you in SQL Dev. It generates that template that you can use to execute the program. SQL Developer Web is adding specific support for PL SQL editing, compiling, debugging, profiling, all of that jazz this year. And when I say ... the future, SQL Developer is based on JDeveloper, a Fusion framework, a Java framework built in like 2004. It's basically being retired. We're building an all brand new desktop version of SQL Developer. I hope to have something for that to show off for Cloud World this fall. The SQL Developer I'm showing you today isn't going anywhere because when we build new versions of tools, it takes forever to port the features over. I'm sure Janice can tell you all about how that works in the software world. But all the features and keyboard shortcuts and the things that you like about the tools, we're going to try to carry those over into the new platforms. And again, choice is great. You've got all these things to choose from at the end of the day. If you're an Oracle customer, I'm happy. Make sure the tools you're using to write your PL SQL speak to you, do what you need. And if they're not, take a second, watch the video, reach your vendor, call support, read the help, or talk to a coworker. They've probably ran into these problems before. All right. I'm going to bug out. It's been a long day. It's been a long week. This is your last chance to ask questions. I hear nothing. I'm going to assume we're good. I have pre-recorded versions of this talk in various forms on YouTube and on my blog. If you would like to be lazy and ask me for those links, feel free to reach out. It's been great speaking with everyone today, and thanks again, Viscosity, for making this happen with the New York Oracle user group.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Looks like you may have 1 or 2 new questions in the chat box as well. Oh, and many thanks.
They're just telling us how awesome we are. Robert's got a question. No, someone had a, where was the code outline? So Scott, in one of the PL SQL editors, right click and say code outline. And it'll get it for you. And there's a simple mode and a complicated mode. And the nice thing about the complicated mode is if you fall into a construct you're not familiar with, they are linked into the docs. So you can learn more about how that collection type is instantiated and yada, yada, yada. You guys are too nice. Thanks for all the compliments. Oh, here's another question. When importing the data from Excel, does SQL Developer sense the data types like Apex does? Yeah, so Michael, we should detect timestamps and dates, numbers and strings. And even for the dates and timestamps, we should be able to guess what the proper NLS date format is for those to be properly brought in. You might find that you need to override the settings. Like we might say, oh, this is a varchar2 size 30, because we only by default read in the first 50 or 100 rows. And on row 101, there'll be a column that's like 31 characters wide. You can bump the scan size up. So you can say, hey, read in all of the rows or read in the first 1,000. That usually does a better job of guessing the column widths, but we should always see numbers as numbers and dates as dates. I will say this, if we find one row out of the 100 where the number is actually a string, we bump everything to string. So again, you could override that to number and just let that row be rejected. And the other thing you can do is you can say generate insert scripts. And so instead of actually doing the import, we just generate a SQL Plus script, and then you can go in there and change it up to do whatever you want. You know, guys, I have to admit, it's been a long time since I've done a SQL developer tips and tricks session. So thanks for the opportunity to do that. And I think we're good.
Thank you so much. We always appreciate it when you can come and talk to us. I'm sure everyone here is excited to hopefully see you in person again sometime soon. Are you going to be doing any conferences this year?
I'll be in Las Vegas for Cloud World. And before that, I don't know.
All
I
right.
know I've seen user groups and conferences spark back up. So hope springs eternal. And I'm sure Chris wants to get back out there again in the UK and Europe. So yeah, look for us. And if not, we'll continue waving at each other on Zoom.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody who gave us your time today. I know it's probably been a long week for all of us. And those of you who got to attend multiple days of this conference, I hope you enjoyed every single bit of it. If you have recommendations for us to do this again next year, we will gladly take it. NYOUG and all user groups, honestly, across the country, appreciate your support. And as we've been doing things virtually, you know, it's been a lot harder, but I am so impressed with how many of you are still engaging with us. So thank you so much. Cannot say thank you enough. So again, thank you to Chris. Thank you to Jeff. Thank you to our sponsors and to all of you who attended. I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.